The airport was crowded with people rushing in every direction. Sarah held her small bag close, her heart beating faster than usual. She had never liked airports. They made her feel small, like one face in a sea of strangers. Tonight was different, though. Tonight she was leaving behind her old life, her mistakes, her broken hopes. She wanted to start fresh in another city, even if she carried nothing but dreams. When the gate opened, she walked toward the plane. The bright lights of the runway stretched out like stars. The air smelled of jet fuel and rain. She took a deep breath and whispered to herself, "This is it. A new beginning." Inside the plane, everything felt tighter, quieter. Passengers were already finding their seats, storing bags, settling in for the night flight. Sarah looked at her boarding pass, seat 17A, by the window. She smiled softly. At least she would have the window to herself. She always liked watching the clouds, even when her heart felt heavy. But when she reached her row, someone was already there. A tall man stood near the seat, lifting his bag into the overhead compartment. He looked simple, almost too simple. Plain gray shirt, dark trousers, nothing fancy. His hair was slightly messy, his face calm, unreadable. Sarah slid into her seat quietly, avoiding his eyes. The man sat beside her in 17B. He didn't say a word, just fastened his seatbelt and leaned back. For a while, they were just two strangers sharing the same small space. The plane took off smoothly, lights of the city fading below. Sarah pressed her forehead against the window, watching the dark sky. She thought about her old life, the people who never believed in her, the struggles that left her tired. A part of her wanted to cry, but she held it in. Then it happened. The plane suddenly shook hard, as if caught by invisible hands. Trays rattled, passengers gasped, and a child began to cry loudly. The calm voice of the captain came on, saying, "Ladies and gentlemen, we are experiencing a little turbulence. Please remain seated and keep your seatbelts fastened." But this didn't feel like a little turbulence. The entire cabin rocked, and Sarah's heart jumped into her throat. Fear gripped her chest. She hated flying, and this was her nightmare coming true. Without thinking, she reached out, and her hand landed on the man's arm beside her. Her fingers trembled as they clutched him tightly. She realized what she had done, but she couldn't pull away. Her fear was stronger than her pride. The man turned his head slowly. His eyes met hers, calm, deep, steady. He didn't flinch, didn't laugh, didn't push her hand away. Instead, he simply placed his other hand over hers. Warm, firm, reassuring. "Don't worry," he said softly, his voice low but strong. "It will pass." Sarah's breath caught. Something in his tone cut through the panic. It wasn't just the words, it was the way he said them, like he had faced storms before and survived. For a moment, the fear loosened its grip on her chest. The plane shook again, harder this time. Gasps filled the cabin. But Sarah's eyes stayed locked on the stranger beside her. His face was calm, almost too calm, like the turbulence was nothing compared to what he had known. Minutes felt like hours, but slowly, the shaking stopped. The captain's voice returned, announcing that the flight would now continue smoothly. Passengers sighed in relief. Some even laughed nervously. But Sarah couldn't laugh. Her hand was still on the stranger's arm. Realizing this, she pulled it back quickly, her cheeks burning. I'm sorry," she whispered, embarrassed. "I didn't mean to." The man shook his head gently. "You don't need to apologize." His voice carried a strange kindness. No judgment, no awkwardness. Just calm acceptance. For the first time, Sarah really looked at him. He didn't look rich or important. He didn't even look curious about her. Yet, in those few minutes, he had given her something no one else had in a long time. Comfort. Silence settled between them again, but it was no longer empty. It was heavy, filled with something unspoken. Sarah leaned back in her seat, trying to calm her heartbeat. The stranger closed his eyes, as if nothing unusual had happened. But Sarah knew something had. That simple touch, born out of panic, had created a connection she couldn't explain. And though he looked like just another ordinary passenger, something deep inside her whispered that he was not ordinary at all. As the plane continued through the dark sky, Sarah stared out of the window. The stars seemed closer, brighter. She wondered if destiny had just sat her next to a man who would change her life forever. The turbulence had passed, but Sarah's heart was still racing. She clutched her small bag in her lap, staring at the dark clouds outside the window. Every little movement of the plane made her flinch. She had never been good with flying, and tonight's storm had tested her limits. The man beside her, Adrian, as she would later learn his name, sat calmly, eyes half closed. There was something strange about him. He didn't just seem unaffected by the turbulence. He seemed unshakable, as if he had faced worse storms than this. That calmness both comforted her and made her more curious. Sarah shifted in her seat, trying not to stare, but curiosity got the better of her. You weren't scared at all, were you?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Adrian opened his eyes slowly and looked at her. His expression was neutral, but there was a hint of a smile. "Fear is natural," he said quietly. "But panicking won't help. You survive better when you stay calm." Sarah blinked. His voice was soothing, steady. It carried a strange authority, not the kind that demanded obedience, but the kind that made you feel safe. She felt her panic slowly easing, even as the plane rocked lightly again. I don't know how to stay calm," she admitted, her voice shaking. "I've never liked flying, and tonight, it just felt too much." He nodded, listening carefully. "It's okay," he said. "You don't have to be strong all the time. It's human to be scared. But fear passes, if you let it." There was something in the way he spoke that made Sarah trust him, even though she had just met him. It was like he understood her without needing explanations, like he had faced her kind of fear before. The rest of the flight began in silence, but this silence was different. It was not awkward or empty. It was quiet companionship, the kind that made a person feel less alone in the world. Sarah tried to focus on the clouds outside the window, but her mind kept wandering to him. After a while she asked, cautiously, "So, where are you going?" Adrian hesitated for a moment, then replied carefully, "Business. Meetings. Some obligations." His words were vague, but they were calm, precise. He wasn't showing off, wasn't bragging. He just said enough to answer her question. Sarah nodded, sensing there was more he wasn't telling. She wondered why, but the thought didn't bother her yet. For the first time in weeks, she felt at ease. She could speak without feeling judged, and somehow, that comfort was new, rare. Minutes passed. The hum of the engines and the soft conversations around them filled the cabin. Sarah glanced at Adrian. He wasn't looking at her, just staring at the seat in front, deep in thought. But she felt a strange connection, a pull she couldn't explain. It was as if the brief touch during the turbulence had sparked something that neither of them fully understood yet. "I'm Sarah," she finally said, a little hesitantly. "I don't think I caught your name earlier." "Adrian," he replied, nodding slightly. His voice was calm, polite, unassuming. "It's nice to meet you properly." Sarah smiled softly. "Nice to meet you too. Thanks for, before helping me stay calm." Adrian's lips curved in the faintest smile. "It was nothing. Panic is temporary. But sometimes, people need someone to remind them that it passes." Sarah nodded, feeling her chest tighten. She couldn't explain why, but his words stayed with her, like an echo she couldn't ignore. As the flight continued, they talked quietly, in small bursts. About clouds, about books, about little things in life. Adrian didn't reveal much about himself, but the way he listened made Sarah feel seen. Not noticed, not glanced at, but truly seen. She realized that in a world that often judged her for mistakes and failures, this stranger treated her like she mattered. And for Sarah, that was extraordinary. Hours passed, the plane cruising smoothly now above the clouds. Sarah glanced at Adrian one more time. He looked ordinary, simple clothes, calm face, quiet demeanor, but somehow, the ordinary had begun to feel special. For the first time that night, Sarah didn't just feel relief at surviving the turbulence. She felt curiosity, excitement, and a strange warmth in her heart. That simple, quiet man had changed the fear into something more, something she wasn't ready to name yet, but something powerful enough to stay with her long after the plane landed. She didn't know it, but Adrian had done the same. His calm had not just helped her survive the storm, it had begun to connect their hearts in a way neither expected. And as the city lights appeared far below, twinkling like stars, Sarah realized that the night had given her more than a flight. It had given her a story. One that was only beginning. The plane touched down smoothly, but Sarah's heart was still beating fast. Her mind replayed every moment of the flight. The turbulence, the panic, and the strange calm of the man beside her. She gathered her bag and followed the crowd toward the exit, glancing nervously at Adrian. He moved quietly beside her, polite but reserved, carrying only a small leather bag. He didn't talk much, just nodded politely to the flight attendants and passengers. Sarah tried to make conversation. "So, this is your first time in the city?" she asked, trying to sound casual. Adrian shook his head slightly. "No. I've been here a few times. But not often." His answers were short, calm, yet precise. Sarah sensed he was hiding something, but she didn't push. There was something about him, he didn't have to explain, and yet, she felt a connection she couldn't ignore. Outside the terminal, passengers scattered to find taxis, buses, or waiting cars. Sarah expected Adrian to disappear quickly into the crowd. She had assumed he was just another traveler, like anyone else on the flight. But then she noticed something unusual. Two men in dark suits and earpieces stood near the exit, scanning the crowd. When they saw Adrian, they immediately straightened, their faces serious but respectful. One of them moved quickly toward him. Adrian paused, and the men fell into step beside him. Then, almost instantly, a sleek black luxury car rolled to the curb. The engine was silent but powerful, the body polished and gleaming under the airport lights. Sarah froze. Her eyes widened. This can't be. He looked so ordinary on the plane. Why does a car like that wait for him? The car door opened, and Adrian stepped inside. One of the suited men opened the door for him, bowing slightly before closing it behind him. The car drove away silently, almost like it had appeared from nowhere. Sarah's legs felt weak. She hadn't expected this. The calm, humble man on the plane, the one who had reassured her during the turbulence, was not ordinary at all. She turned to see the airport crowd, hoping she had imagined it. But no, the luxury car was gone down the street, leaving only the normal city traffic behind. Her mind raced. Who was he? Why had he hidden this life? And why had he seemed so simple when he was clearly not? Sarah took a deep breath and tried to calm herself. She felt like she had stepped into a story she didn't understand. The man she had trusted, the man who had comforted her in panic, the man she had felt drawn to, he carried secrets she could never have imagined. She didn't know it yet, but that night would stay with her forever. The simple touch in fear, the quiet conversation, and the calm presence of a stranger, they had planted something in her heart. Something that would not fade, no matter how much the truth startled her. The next morning, Sarah couldn't stop thinking about Adrian. She replayed the flight in her mind, remembering every detail. The way his hand had been warm, the way he spoke calmly, the strange strength in his silence. And she remembered the car, the suited men, the polished black vehicle that carried him away. She tried to tell herself it didn't matter. He was probably a business traveler, someone important but unrelated to her world. Still, curiosity gnawed at her. Why had he hidden so much? And why did she feel drawn to him despite barely knowing anything about him? Later that day, she checked her phone and found a message from an unknown number. It was simple. "I hope you arrived safely. Hey." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. Could it be him? The initials matched. She didn't know if she should reply, but her fingers hovered over the screen. Every instinct told her he was not just ordinary, and that something bigger was waiting for her. As the city lights turned on that evening, Sarah looked out of her small apartment window. She couldn't stop thinking about the man from the plane. The one who seemed humble yet mysterious, kind yet hidden behind secrets. And she didn't know it yet, but this chance encounter, born out of panic, turbulence, and a brief, accidental touch, was about to change her life completely. Sarah's ordinary world had collided with a world she could not yet understand. And one question burned in her mind: who was Adrian, really? Days had passed since the flight, but Sarah couldn't stop thinking about Adrian. His calm presence, the way he had comforted her during the turbulence, and the secret she glimpsed at the airport haunted her mind. Every ordinary person she met seemed to pale in comparison to the memory of him. She never expected to see him again, until the day she walked into a bustling charity event where she worked part-time. The hall was decorated with sparkling lights, elegant flowers, and expensive tables. Guests in suits and gowns whispered quietly, shaking hands and making small talk. And there he was. Sarah froze. Adrian was not the quiet, ordinary traveler she had seen on the plane. He moved confidently through the crowd, dressed in a tailored suit, polished shoes, and an aura of authority. People bowed slightly as he passed, and some even whispered his name with respect. Her heart skipped. That's him. The same man from the plane? Adrian's eyes met hers across the hall. For a brief moment, the calm warmth she remembered returned. But now there was something more: confidence, power, and a quiet command that made the room feel smaller around him. Sarah walked forward slowly, unsure of what to say. Adrian noticed her hesitation and smiled faintly, that same mysterious smile from the plane. He gestured toward her subtly, inviting her closer. As she approached, she noticed whispers and curious glances from the guests. Who is she? How does she know him? Sarah felt self-conscious. She was just a simple girl, dressed modestly among people who looked like they belonged to another world. Adrian leaned closer and spoke quietly, just for her to hear. I didn't expect to see you here. I work here, she stammered, trying to appear composed. Part-time. Just helping out. He nodded, his eyes softening. I see. I didn't mean to surprise you. Sarah looked at him, her curiosity burning. Who is he really? The man who had been calm during the turbulence, the one who had reassured her in fear, and now the man everyone respected as if he were royalty. Before she could ask, a well-dressed woman approached Adrian. She bowed slightly and spoke in a tone of reverence. Adrian listened politely, nodding, and then gently excused himself, stepping a little away from Sarah. Sarah's heart sank slightly. She realized she had glimpsed only a part of his world, his life of wealth, power, and expectations. This was not the simple man she had met on the plane. Yet, deep inside, she knew the man she liked, the man who had calmed her panic, still existed beneath the surface. As the evening continued, Adrian returned to her side. He didn't hold her hand or make grand gestures. Instead, he stayed close, quietly protective, guiding her subtly through the crowd. Sarah noticed how his eyes scanned for her comfort, how he seemed aware of the whispers, the stares, and yet, he remained composed. For the first time, she understood that the man she had felt drawn to was living in two worlds, one ordinary, humble, and kind, and another powerful, influential, and public. And somehow, he managed both. Sarah's heart ached with confusion. Could someone like her ever belong in his world? Could the connection they had on the plane survive the chasm between their lives? Adrian seemed to sense her thoughts. He leaned slightly closer and whispered, "Don't worry about them. Just be yourself. That is enough for me." Her chest tightened. Those words reminded her of the plane, of the turbulence, and the way he had comforted her without judgment. In a world full of expectations, his words were like an anchor. The evening ended with applause and speeches, and guests began to leave. Adrian turned to Sarah. "I know this world can feel overwhelming," he said softly. "But I hope you see that it is still me beneath all this." Sarah looked into his eyes and nodded, a small smile forming. For a moment, the power, the whispers, and the luxury faded. She saw the same man who had held her hand during panic, the man who had made her feel safe. Yet the questions remained. Who was he, truly? Why did he hide so much from her? And could their growing bond survive the difference between their worlds? As they stepped out into the cool night, the city lights reflected in Adrian's eyes. Sarah realized one thing clearly: her ordinary life had collided with an extraordinary one, and there was no turning back now. The connection sparked on that flight was still alive, but the stakes were higher. The world she had stepped into was complicated, powerful, and full of secrets. And the man she was beginning to care for was no ordinary stranger. Sarah didn't know it yet, but their story had only just begun. The days after the charity event were a blur for Sarah. She couldn't stop thinking about Adrian, the calm man on the plane, now the powerful, respected figure in the city. Her thoughts kept returning to the moments when his eyes had met hers, the subtle gestures, and the quiet words that had made her heart race. Adrian, too, seemed to think about her. He would find her in unexpected places, always careful not to draw attention. A smile here, a nod there, small conversations that made her feel seen. Each encounter deepened the connection, but each one also reminded her of the impossible gap between their worlds. One late afternoon, she found herself in the city park, walking quietly along the path lined with cherry trees. Adrian appeared from the shadows, as if he had been waiting. "Sarah," he said softly, "I hoped I would find you here." Her heart skipped. I didn't expect you." He smiled faintly. "I never really expect things. But sometimes, fate has other plans." They walked side by side, the silence between them comfortable yet heavy with unspoken feelings. Every small brush of their hands sent shivers through Sarah. She felt a mixture of excitement and fear. Finally, Adrian stopped near a bench and turned to her. "Sarah, I need to be honest," he said, his voice low. "I've never felt this way about anyone before." Sarah's breath caught. She knew where this was going but was terrified to admit her own feelings. I don't know what to say," she whispered. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. His fingers lingered for a moment, warm and gentle. It was the kind of touch that spoke of closeness, trust, and forbidden desires. Sarah's heart raced. She wanted to pull away, but she couldn't. Her own hand trembled at her side. "I shouldn't feel this," Adrian continued, his eyes locked on hers. "You're different from everyone in my world. I've been trained to avoid attachments, to keep distance. But with you, I can't." Sarah's chest tightened. She had always known love could be complicated, but this felt dangerous. Their worlds were different, her simple life, his powerful one. Yet, standing there, feeling his hand so close, she realized the pull between them was stronger than fear. A soft breeze moved through the trees, carrying petals that danced around them. Adrian's hand finally touched hers, lightly but deliberately. It was a forbidden touch, one that should not have happened, yet it felt inevitable. "I don't care about the complications," Adrian whispered. "I only care about you." Tears pricked at Sarah's eyes. The forbidden nature of their bond, the impossibility, and the intensity of her feelings collided inside her. She wanted to say no, to protect herself, but her heart refused. I feel the same," she admitted softly. "But what about your world? Your life?" He smiled faintly, a mix of sadness and hope. "I don't know. But I know that I can't stop feeling this. Every moment with you matters more than anything else." For the first time, Sarah understood the depth of his emotions. The man who seemed calm and composed carried a storm of feelings inside him, just as intense as the turbulence that had brought them together. They stood there for a long time, hands lightly touching, hearts beating in rhythm. Every second felt like a stolen moment from a world that would never fully understand them. Every glance, every gentle touch, built a connection that was impossible to ignore. And yet, the tension remained. The city around them carried expectations, whispers, and boundaries they could not ignore. Their love, though powerful, was a secret waiting to be discovered, a forbidden story in the making. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Sarah realized that the plane's turbulence had been only the beginning. The true storm was the pull between her heart and his, between the ordinary and the extraordinary, between desire and fear. They knew one thing: this forbidden touch had awakened something neither could resist. And from that moment, nothing would ever be the same. The city lights sparkled below like stars as Sarah sat by her window, her thoughts a whirlwind. The past days had been a storm of emotions: Adrian's calm presence, the forbidden touches, the secret glances. Her heart was full, yet heavy with questions. How could a simple girl like her belong in his world? Could their bond survive the gap between their lives? Adrian sat beside her, quiet but steady. He didn't need to speak. She could feel his thoughts through the gentle pressure of his hand brushing hers occasionally. Tonight, they were alone for the first time since the events of the past week, away from the whispers and judgments of the city. "Sarah," Adrian began, his voice low, yet carrying the weight of his emotions, "I've never met anyone like you. You make me feel alive, calm, real." Her heart skipped. She had always feared his world would overwhelm her, but now, hearing him speak so openly, she realized that the person she loved was still the same man from the plane, the one who had held her hand during turbulence, who had comforted her when panic gripped her chest. "But, Adrian, your life, it's so different," she whispered. "Your world is not mine. How can we be together?" He turned to look at her, his eyes intense but tender. "I don't care about the differences. I care about us. Every moment with you is worth more than everything else I have." Sarah felt tears sting her eyes. The forbidden touches, the secret meetings, the stolen moments, they had all led to this. Her heart had chosen him long before her mind could accept the risks. "Then, we face it together," she said softly, her voice firm despite the trembling inside. "No matter the complications, no matter the judgments." A faint smile appeared on Adrian's face, one that made her heart flutter. He reached out, taking both of her hands in his. "Together," he confirmed, sealing the promise without words. Later that night, Adrian's mother called. At first, Sarah feared disapproval. She had imagined the worst: rejection, judgment, the impossibility of love crossing these worlds. But when the call came, Adrian's mother's voice was calm, almost warm. "I've been watching," she said. "And I see the way he looks at you. You make him happy. That is all that matters." Sarah blinked in surprise. Happiness. Even in this powerful, complicated world, the simple truth of happiness could be enough. "You have my blessing," Adrian's mother continued. "But remember, life will test you. Stay true to each other, and you will succeed." Hearing those words, Sarah felt a weight lift off her chest. She was no longer afraid. Adrian was beside her, their hearts aligned, and the support of his family, though tentative, gave her courage. The following days were filled with quiet moments of connection. Walks in the park, late-night conversations, shared laughter. Each small touch, each glance, reminded them why they had chosen each other despite the challenges. One evening, Adrian and Sarah returned to the airport, the place where it all began. The runway lights stretched into the night, reflecting the memories of the turbulence, the panic, and the forbidden touch that had started everything. "Do you remember?" Adrian asked softly, his eyes locked on hers. "How could I forget?" Sarah replied, smiling through her tears. "You held my hand when I was terrified. And I promised you calm," he said, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "And I meant it. Then, now, always." Sarah felt her heart swell. The ordinary flight, the turbulence, the fear, they had all led to this moment. Not just survival, not just courage, but love. Real love, built on trust, honesty, and the willingness to face life's storms together. Adrian pulled her close, and they held each other tightly. Outside, the night was quiet, the city lights twinkling like the stars they had once flown above. They didn't need words. Their hearts spoke for them. In that moment, Sarah realized that life was unpredictable. Storms would come, turbulence would shake them, and the world might try to pull them apart. But the bond they had created, born from fear, nurtured in connection, and strengthened through forbidden touches, was unbreakable. The flight of strangers had ended, but the journey of love had just begun. And as they walked hand in hand toward the waiting car, Sarah knew one truth. Love, when real, transcends fear, status, and even the most impossible differences.